Hi, welcome to this series about the elements, where you are going to learn how to maximize your talents without maxing out on energy. Now, I just want to give you an introduction because there's a lot of things out there and it can be very confusing. That's why I want to set you up before we dive into different elements, what it exactly means, and how you can get a better understanding of what we're going to talk about in the next few videos. So when I talk about the elements, I talk about the ancient Greek elements, which are fire, earth, air, and water. Those are the four that I'm talking about, and those are linked to all the different astrological signs. Now, we all have a different element that is predominantly present within our astrological chart. But we all have all of these elements within the chart. So it doesn't mean that you don't have any water or you don't have any air or maybe not even any fire. We all have them. But it might be that in your case, you have very little fire energy in your chart, or maybe there are no planets in fire signs. That doesn't mean you don't have fire. It just means that you have to find other ways to balance that fire. But I'm going to walk you through all of that in a second. So these elements, but also the modes, I'll be talking a little bit about the modes because I think they're very important to mention. So the elements, what I said, are fire, earth, air, and water. And then on the other side, we have three different modes. And the modes tell a lot about how the energy is being expressed. We have cardinal energy, we have fixed energy, and we have mutable energy. Again, I will go over that in a minute, but I just want to point it out to you that the element plus the mode tells a lot about the energy of the sign. Now, there is no good or bad sign. There is no positive or negative element. They all have a high side or a low side. They have a light side and a shadow side. And once you become aware of the different sides, you can also train yourself and become aware when you are expressing the high side or when it's very much going into the shadow. And when you know that, when you start to understand that, you can pull yourself out of the shadow and express the high side of the sign or the element that we're talking about. So let's get started. The first one is fire. We all understand when we see fire, it warms us, it brings light, it's nice to be around. So when it comes to the expression within our chart, it's very much connected to courage, to purpose, to being very passionate about things, which is definitely the high side. Most fire signs are very proud, very confident, and they really like to go out. It's a much more extroverted sign. So they project much more of their energy outwards instead of inward. So by the way, we have two extroverted and two introverted elements. But generally speaking, fire is more outward going. Now the fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And they really like to be out in the public. But a little bit of the downside, the shadow side, is when this enthusiasm and this courage turns into arrogance and it turns into destructiveness. So it's not actually very helpful, because think about the fire, it can actually transform something completely. So when you have a piece of paper, you set it on fire and the only thing you have left is the ashes. So that fire can actually burn something down in a bad way, but it could also help to transform something, because once fire has touched it, it can never go back to its original shape. So think about that when you are channeling your inner fire, that once you burn something, it has to be transformed. And the way to do this is to make it into a better version than it was before. The next element we have up is earth. And an earth element is much more introverted. That doesn't mean you have to be an introvert, but the energy of earth is much more introverted. It's connected. Think about Mother Earth, how she carries us. That actually actively doing something or reaching out to us. We can be grounded, we can be supported by her presence. And that's exactly what earth elements do as well. They bring us stability, they are very grounded, and they really provide us with the safety that we need. It's also the sustaining energy. So where the fire is much more of a initiating energy, earth is much more the sustaining energy. It keeps the course, it keeps going forward, and it doesn't get too distracted. The shadow side of earth signs is being too rigid, too much looking into one direction and not really able to move through all of that. So a really good practice is to come back into your body, because earth signs or earth elements are really about embodiment, feeling yourself in your body. Don't go out there too much. Come back into your body and ground yourself. That's a really good practice, to stay away from the rigidity and to stay away from not wanting other people's input, but be more open and be more inviting. It's also really connected, what I said with the embodiment, is living through our senses, is the sensuality that the earth signs have. It's also very much related to money, which is of course very much tied to the security piece, and also to love, but then more of an earth type of love. So not necessarily the airy fairy type of love. This is more the practical, down to earth love. The three signs that are earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. The next element we have up is air. Now, air signs are also generally more outgoing, a little bit less than fire, but still they're very much outgoing. What is really interesting with the air sign is they love to gather information. It's very much linked to communication, and then absorb that energy and then teach about it and then spread the message. So it's turning what they learn into very practical teachings. They really like to be objective. So they weigh all the options, and then this one works, and they don't get their emotions involved too much, which can also be one of the shadow sides of air signs, because they don't allow their emotions to come in. We all have emotions, we all experience them, but for air signs, it's really important to allow the emotions to also be there and to embrace those emotions, instead of thinking we need all emotions out and then we can make a good decision, but we also need the emotions in. So that's a little bit of a balancing that can happen with the air signs. Also generally very good at reading, writing, speaking, everything that's related to communication is very much up their alley. Now the three different signs that are air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And yes, Aquarius is an air sign. It is not a water sign. It might be confusing with the Aquarius, the water bearer, but it's actually an air sign, because Aquarius likes to go with the wind, like the air, and it's not necessarily as much as fluid as water. Which brings me to the next element, water, and this is a much more intuitive and emotional element. They are people that have a lot of water in their chart are much more connected to their emotions, much more in tune with their intuition, and very empathic, which is a really beautiful way to tap into what's happening around them. But also they can get lost in their own world, because they get so much input from outside sources. And with input, I really mean emotional input and feelings from other people, whereas air signs is more of a practical information. So think about social media, about internet, books, and things like that. That's the input that air signs get. But water signs, they get more of the emotional feedback from other people. And when it's harder then to distinguish that this is my emotion, this is their emotion, and that is separate. So for water signs, they really allow to understand people on a very deep level. So it's not just the feelings, but also the deeper unconscious patterns. They're able to just tap into that without any effort. And that's where their power is, but also where it can go to the flip side, where they can't really see what is theirs, what is somebody else's, to really set up boundaries. That is something important for the water signs. Then let's head, and the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Those are the 3 water signs. So I hope that explains a lot with the different sides. I hope you can already understand how the different elements are represented in your life. And in the next few videos, we will go over how you can use these specific elements in your business, what you're good at, and what are the challenges. But before we go over that, I wanted to point out about the modes. And what I said before, the reason why I wanted to share with you about the modes is they tell a lot about how different energies are being expressed. The first the first mode that we have up is cardinal energy. Cardinal is very much the startup energies, like the get up and go. It also marks the beginning of a new season in our calendar. So Aries marks the beginning of spring. It's the spring equinox. Then we have Cancer marking summer solstice. Then we have Libra, which is the fall equinox. And then we have Capricorn, which is the winter solstice. So those 4 different signs are cardinal, which means that really is the startup of something new. It's the startup of a new season, but it's also much more of the initiating type of energy. It's much more spontaneous. It is really to get the message out there. They're not really afraid to get started. Also, they usually might not be that enthusiastic to finish either. It's much more about the startup energy opposed to actually finishing things. But don't worry, you will get all the explanation in the next few videos. The next one is fixed. And a fixed mode are the cross-quarter days or midpoints. So they're exactly between, let's say, a summer solstice and a fall equinox, or between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. Exactly in the middle, that's where the fixed signs are. And the fixed signs, they really like to just stay the course, go. Again, this is more of a sustaining type of energy. And they really move forward. They're committed. What the word fixed already says. What they're doing, they do it full on. Now, the different fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. The flip side of this, the shadow side, is that they are so fixed and so determined that they can get a little bit stuck and stubborn in their own habits. So it's really good to have a little bit of more motion, which brings me to the next mode, the last one, and that is mutable energy. This is the energy that moves more. It's more fluid. It's less stuck as, let's say, fixed is. It is really flexible. It likes to go with the flow. There are no certain astrological moments in the calendar connected to it. But if you think about it, mutables bring us to the next season. So we have mutable, and then afterwards we have the cardinal energy. So it's like the bridge that brings us to the next season. So when it is expressed on the lower side, it's like inconsistent and it is very scattered. So it's like all over the place, thinking everything is interesting and not really committed to something that they really want to do. Whereas fixed, if they commit, they are super committed. But mutable is more difficult to point down and to pin down and to really allow yourself to keep moving forward. So the 4 different signs that are mutable are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. That's all for the introduction. In the next few videos, I'm going to go over the fire signs, the earth signs, air, and the water signs. So I break it down. What are the high sides? What are the low sides? What are the challenges? And what are the amazing opportunities that you have within your chart? So I can't wait to dive into this with you.